Everybody, welcome back to the NC State Insider Podcast. I'm your host and lead beat writer, Tucker Sennett, joining you here today to talk some NC State football in the week before a crucial matchup at Pitt on Saturday in an NFL stadium against a red-hot Panthers squad. But I wanted to look at, just as we do often throughout the season, the remaining path for NC State. For context, the Wolfpack enters this matchup against Pitt with a 4-3 record, a 1-2 record in conference play for the ACC, two games outside of that bowl eligibility threshold, with some winnable games left on the schedule. And I just want to run through the rest of the season for the Wolfpack, maybe give my predictions for how I think these games are going to go the rest of the way, and then send you on your merry way. So let's start with this Pitt game. Obviously, we'll go more in depth with the predictions as we get later in the week. I'll have some, more detailed information about this Pitt team, about where NC State stands from an injury standpoint and a contributor standpoint. But for now, I think given the change at quarterback for Pitt and how well they're playing, I still think this is going to be a really difficult game for NC State to win. I think going on the road is difficult, although Dave Doeren, and I talked about this on the podcast yesterday, has been historically really successful out of the bye week. And I think that's really going to help this NC State team, despite all those other issues that they're dealing with. And I think NC State's going to be able to pull this game out and get a win, knowing what they have coming the next week. As I said, that game is this Saturday in Pittsburgh, October 25th, against the Pitt Panthers, who are 5-2 with a 3-1 ACC record. They're sort of in the mix in a pretty wide open ACC right now. The Wolfpack's next opponent, who they'll play in Carter Finley Stadium on November 1st, is going to be your ACC leader, the leader in the clubhouse, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, led by Brent Key and a really, really phenomenal quarterback in Haynes King, a quarterback that I actually do believe that Haynes King is the best pound for pound quarterback in the ACC right now, because he just he helps lead his team to winning football games by doing a little bit of everything. This is a guy who can run for over 100 yards. He can pass when he needs to. He's not totally limited on that front. He just had an 120-yard rushing performance with a touchdown. He's just a grinder. He's always got the dirtiest jersey on the field. A phenomenal quarterback for Georgia Tech. They'll come into Carter Finley on November 1st. And of course, NC State would love to be riding into this potential upset match against the number 7 team in the country. They'd love to be riding high after a win over Pitt. I don't know that that's going to be the case, but if they come into this game with a 2-2 conference record and some confidence that they can go on the road and beat a Pitt team that is red hot, you never know. Things can get weird in the ACC, especially for ranked teams on the road against unranked opponents. Just ask Florida State the last few weeks, and we'll get to them. And ask, I mean, Miami just lost to a team that came into their building and beat their brakes off for most of the game. Obviously, Miami came back and made it a little bit closer, but Louisville dominated that game both physically and from a schematic standpoint for most of the night, and they forced Carson Beck into some really bad throws. So if NC State can sort of come up with some pizzazz, come up with some ways to make this Georgia Tech offense have to lean more on the passing game, something that they don't want to do, then you never know. And if you can make it a shootout with CJ Bailey and he can use this bye week that NC State has just had to figure out some of those second half issues and find ways to be more efficient after the halftime whistle blows. NC State could be a very different team in this home stretch. I still think they don't have enough firepower, and the defense is just kind of a nightmare matchup against Georgia Tech because they've struggled so much against the run at times. They've struggled so much on third down, and this is a Georgia Tech team that gets you into third and short and then just pounds you to death with King and their running backs. So I don't think this is a win. So I have NC State splitting its first two games out of the first bye. Then the Wolfpack hit another open week, so two bye weeks here, um, where they'll be able to recuperate and find some more health, hopefully, during this week. It's never good to go into these games with missing key depth pieces, which is what NC State's been dealing with for so many weeks here after playing seven straight games. And a lot of the players that spoke today at the media availability said, it was really just a great reset, a great time to rehab. Some of the guys were able to go home and just rest their bodies, watch film, learn what their mistakes were. But getting anybody back should be a massive bonus for this NC State team over the next 3 or 4 weeks. Unfortunately, out of this bye week for NC State, the challenges are pretty daunting right out of the gate. They'll go down to Miami to face the currently ranked number 9 Miami Hurricanes. Coming off of that loss to Louisville, Miami will probably be in all-time urgency mode for the next 5 to 6 games because their playoff hopes are on the line by going to an ACC championship, and now there's really no room for error for them. They cannot be a two-loss ACC team if they want to have hopes of making the playoff. And with that loss to Louisville, they're going to need to differentiate themselves moving forward through the rest of the year. And Miami just simply cannot afford to lose a game at home against a team like NC State. I do think that NC State will come out ready to play in this game. I think CJ Bailey's going to want to put on a show in front of a hometown crowd. He obviously is that South Florida quarterback. He's got those South Florida connections. So he's going to want to play really well in front of his family, in front of his friends. And, there's obviously some other factors that could come up that I'm not going to dive into here, but I think you know where I'm getting at with that statement. But Miami's going to be a really desperate team. They're going to want to turn this defensive issue around after that Louisville game kind of exposed some problems for them. And I don't see this being a loss. So I have the Wolfpack, or I don't see this being a win for the Wolfpack. So I have them going 1-2 since this first bye week with that win over Pittsburgh and then a loss to Georgia Tech and Miami, two ranked opponents. So not a total surprise there. And I'm not throwing out any possibility of an upset because it is the ACC. Things happen. It's one of the craziest football conferences in the nation. And, Miami has certainly shown some warts now in that loss. So we'll see what happens down there not in Coral Gables, but that's where the university is. So we'll just say they're in Coral Gables. After that, NC State has a short turnaround, short week game back in Carter Finley Stadium against the reeling Florida State Seminoles. This is a massive opportunity for NC State because it is a chance to get to 7 win or to give yourself a chance to get to 7 wins, and it is your first shot, realistic shot at being bowl eligible, assuming they win against Pitt. If they lose to Pitt, then this instantly becomes the most important game of the season because you have to win out. If you go into this game 4-5 with the two opponents that NC State is set to face, there's really or excuse me, 4-6, 4-5, 4-5. Sorry, math's all wrong. Um, no, 4-6, four and oh geez, I can't do math. Sorry. NC State's got to win this game. Let's just say that. NC State has to beat a Florida State team that is reeling in a big way. And if NC State has lost 3 in a row, you obviously have concerns about their players sort of calling calling it quits on the year mentally. It's hard to get up for a game like this against a team that's having its own struggles, but it's a home game. It's a Friday night. It's a massive, massive matchup that NC State's going to want nothing more than to prove that it is better than this Mike Norvell-led Florida State team. And then maybe one of the most bizarre matchups of the season coming in that rivalry week because NC State, even if they are reeling by this point in the season, should be a massive favorite in the rivalry game over North Carolina at the end of the season. North Carolina is one of the worst power conference teams, if not the worst. Maybe one of the worst FBS teams in general. Just terrible. Really, really, really bad football team. Looked somewhat improved when they went to Berkeley last week, but there's still just massive deficiencies for this offense. There's obviously a ton of off the field drama with Bill Belichick and everything that's going on there. And this is kind of a prove it game for Dave Doeren to extend that winning streak over UNC to establish that he is still the premier football coach in this state. That's a really, really important game for this program. No matter what NC State comes into the matchup with a record of, if they have 6 wins by then, if they somehow stun one of those ranked opponents, this is still an enormous, enormous matchup from a perception standpoint, from a pride standpoint. It's a really, really important game for the Wolfpack to win, and it might be the game that decides whether they go to the postseason or not. That's NC State's remaining path for the remainder of the 2025 season. If you want more NC State football content over the next few weeks as we wrap things up, and obviously we're going to be ramping up our basketball coverage as well, go ahead and hit our social media channels. You can find me at Senate Tucker on X. You can find the website's X account at Wolfpack on SI, of course, as well. You can also hit up the Facebook page, NC State Wolfpack on SI on Facebook. And of course, if you'd like to watch more episodes of me chatting with you about the NC State athletics program over the next few months, go ahead and subscribe to the Sports Videos on SI YouTube channel for daily episodes of the NC State Insider Podcast. As always, love talking Wolfpack ball with you guys, and I'll do my best to keep keeping you informed. Thanks.